So just a bit of background on myself. So I started TikTok Shop February of 2024. My first month I did $11,000 commission, which was a bit of combination of skill and more so luck more than ever. But when I started, I've never posted a piece of content online. I think I shared on one of my TikToks the first TikTok Shop video I've ever made. I sounded like a robot. I said, don't get scammed. So please, when I say all these things, do not think that I'm a natural. I'm a math guy at heart. I have a degree in applied mathematics. So I like numbers and stuff. So that's where all this comes from. So I worked a 9 to 5 all the way up into the end of August. Beginning of September is when I went all in on TikTok Shop. I'm in the process, I've done over $2 million, well over $2 million GMV at this point. I've taught my mom, my cousin, my grandma. My grandma does do TikTok Shop. And in fact, I just looked because I was curious. So we've done 10K GMV on her account this week thus far. So it's been pretty cool working with her. Yes, my actual grandma, and she's hilarious on TikTok Shop. So if you have any preconceived notions that you can't do TikTok Shop because of what you look like or whatever, I would firmly disagree with that, because everybody from a 24-year-old guy to I think she's 74-year-old woman are doing well on TikTok Shop. So throw all of that out the window. So this year so far, and again, these are all the things I'm going to be talking about, is this year so far for me has actually honestly been record breaking. I haven't done less than 25K in earnings every single month on TikTok Shop, and that's something I personally pride myself on, is consistency, because what's the point of doing 10, 20K a month if you can't consistently repeat that time and time again? So the biggest thing is, over the past year, again, what I'm going to be talking about on this call is there's a lot of things that I've learned, and I've had to teach them myself. I've been in a ton of Discord communities, and no shade to any community by any means, but I think, there's a lot of things, and we kind of alluded to this at the beginning of the call, there's a lot of stuff that I think isn't talked about. And so I want to kind of go through my process specifically as to what I do and why it's different than 99% of people, and why I feel like my process and my systems and the way that I do things are going to be the standard moving forward at some point. And I think what worked last year for a lot of people isn't going to work. And I've seen this time and time again. There's countless examples where I've seen this. So again, all this is backed on data. I've studied TikTok Shop, the algorithm. I've looked at other people's accounts, my accounts. All of this is based on data specifically. So the biggest thing, like the really high level, like what I do specifically is I post one product over and over. And like, for example, one of my accounts, I posted the same product every single day since January 5th. Every single day, nothing else. And that product alone so far this year has made me, it's over $70,000 at this point on one product on one account. So everything that I do is tied to one specific product. And now I'll get into the specific reasons why I think this is happening, but it seems like TikTok, that's the biggest theme I want to get across, is what worked last year isn't working as well this year, and what got you here won't get you there. So you have to really start to adjust to what TikTok is looking for. And I see this time and time again from all of my accounts, is that consistency among products does matter. And so as a result, all of my videos specifically for TikTok Shop Affiliate don't get less than 1K views. So the name of the game, and I'm gonna take you through my process start to finish as to what I'm doing to find some of these products, and how do you identify if it's a winner, because again, I think there's a ton of benefits to focusing on one product specifically. And so the first thing obviously is how do you actually find a product, right? There's a couple different variables that I'm looking for in general. Like, if you want to take one rule out of this, concept of looking for products, if it's in the top 10, I don't care. It doesn't even exist in my mind. Yerba Mate, Boom Boom, Neurogum, don't care, never going to promote it. It's completely saturated. Now, again, I'm not saying that you can't make a couple $100, maybe $1,000, but in my mind, I'm searching for products that are going to make me $10, $20, $30, $40, $50,000 plus on a single product. That's the name of the game for me. So this all comes back to, you got to align on what your goals are specifically. So if your goal is 3 to 4K a month, cool. You can easily get retainers and do 3, 4K a month. There's nothing wrong with that. I personally don't take retainers because I think that kind of limits my, ability to hit these higher levels. I have every, ability to get 1K for 30 videos. I don't take retainers because I am not a fan of being locked into one product. And I think if you want to hit these upper echelons of 10, 20, 30K, which I have consistently done, even my family, my grandma, etc., you have to really focus in on what your goals are. So this all kind of ties back to finding products that align and get you to where your goals are. So if you reverse engineer this, for example, again, Neurogum, Boom Boom, Yerba Mate, I don't care, they don't even exist in my mind, because it is very unlikely. Now, I'm not saying that's impossible. It is statistically unlikely that you are going to make a substantial amount of money for it. Is somebody going to make a substantial amount of money from it? Yes, absolutely. But I'm trying, everything that I do is trying to stack the odds in my favor so that I'm going viral more consistently and, making the most amount of money. If you look at the distribution of sales among the top affiliates for all these products. What do you know? Well, the top 3 affiliates are making most of the money. So if you reverse engineer all of this, you got to understand the math has to work backwards. So for example, if a product is owned, there's 2 ends of the spectrum. If there's one product that's doing, let's say, $400 a day revenue. Okay, so even if you blow up and you take over 50% of that revenue, okay, what's that, maybe $20, $30 a day? That's not going to get me to where I want to be. And the opposite end of the spectrum is also the same as well. So if you're promoting Yerba Mate, Boom Boom, NeuroGum, it's like that product is very statistically unlikely to make me any substantial amount of money. So those don't even exist in my mind. And I just made a TikTok about this the other day. I was like, yeah, somebody was like, oh, this person made XYZ off of Boom Boom and NeuroGum. That's like, cool, I've seen people win the Powerball too. So I'm not trying to win the Powerball, I'm trying to stack the odds in my favor and almost be like a casino where you have an edge over everybody else. And so this kind of goes back to the whole products. So you want to find a product, and I can get into the specifics of it. Like literally I can talk about this for 3 hours on each of these topics alone, but I want to kind of go through my process start to finish to give you guys a good idea of how I go through all this. Finding a winning product, again, there's a couple different things. You don't want it to be too far saturated. You don't want it to be completely dead. It's like you want to find products that, one, people care about. Ask yourself, is the price reasonable? So realistically, anything over $50, don't touch. Because I've seen time and time again on TikTok Shop, people typically like lower priced items. Now, I'm not saying, again, that you can't make money on something a bit more expensive, but just keep that in mind. Like you have to find a product that, one, people like, people care about, and is not too far oversaturated, but isn't, completely beginning. People get stuck on the opposite ends of the spectrum, where it's a top 10 or it's doing no revenue at all, and the sweet spot is kind of somewhere there in the middle where you can kind of take over a listing. So again, this all goes back to the question of how do you become a top 3 affiliate for a product? How do you become a top 3? Because that's where all the money is. The distribution is skewed, and I'll give you a real life example for this. One of my products that I promoted in the month of April, I just made a TikTok on this. I was the #1 affiliate out of 7,000 people, and this is the official brand numbers. They sent this out in one of their Discords. I was #1 out of 7,000 people. My revenue, my GMV specifically for the month of April, I can't remember the exact number, was around 25%. So one person did 25% of the GMV. The second place person did like 22%, something like that. Third place did 17%, something like that. So again, this whole goes back to the picture. How do you put yourself in a position to get to that top 3? That's where all the real life-changing money is, and that's one of the most important things to understand. So you got to find a product that not everybody is on, but it's not, it needs to have some momentum. And what most people don't understand is TikTok is a very momentum-based platform. And I see this on the brand side. I help run 2 brands on TikTok Shop, so I see this from the brand side. Everything is all interconnected. And so when things are pumping, things are going well, everybody else's content is getting pushed. Whereas if a brand starts to fall off, what do you know? All the affiliates videos start to slow down, no matter how good you are. So again, a lot of your success is tied to how well you're picking products and getting on it to capture as much of that market share as you can specifically. So picking that product. And then from there, it's actually, how do you make the content, right? So I kind of call them pillars of content on TikTok Shop. If you can master each pillar, you're going to be able to do videos for any product. So what are the pillars of content as I define them? Again, these are all terms I just made up in my head. So if you look up pillars of content, this isn't going to exist anywhere. But I've had to come up with some name because I really don't see too many people talking about this. But what are the pillars of content? So let's say you found a product that you think is in a good range where it's not too far saturated, but it's not too completely dead on TikTok Shop. You have some room, you can come in there. And this is another thing to add with the product research is a product either works with you, with who you are and what you look like, or it works against you. So typically you want to find products that work with you and not against you. It's going to be an amplifier with how well you do. So for example, I can make the best videos in the world, but how likely is someone going to believe that a 24-year-old guy is going to be selling NAD on aging? It's like, what am I going to say? I'm 40 years old? No one's going to believe that. Whereas if you're someone within that demographic, that's an amplifier. So keep that in mind. You work with you. So I pick products for my grandma that are an amplifier. So use your strengths. I always say, like, if you work with the product, you can double, triple your earnings compared to someone who doesn't fit within that product. So I'm not saying you should only promote products that you would specifically use, but keep in mind, will people buy? Will they buy in that you are someone who uses this product, or the story that you're telling is reasonable, that it actually works? So for example, I've told a story about my parents XYZ. It makes sense that I'm telling the story about my parents. So that's one of those situations. So you found a product now that you think, and again, the number one thing that I recommend is, I kind of call this the 15 video rule. 15 videos isn't the exact number, but it's a general rule you should follow. So typically I'm looking for making 15 videos in a row on one product. And this is because, to me, that's kind of the metric where you can start to figure out, you can test different things. And the problem, this is where another part of this competitive advantage comes from, is if you make one video on a product, you know nothing about that product. You think you know stuff about it. You paint this picture in your head why people want to buy it, but your concept of why people are buying it is probably different than why they're actually buying it. And so you're testing within these 15 videos, you're testing, how are your reviews looking? How is your watch time? How is your percent that watched the full video? How are all these different stats? How are your views to sales? So in general, again, there's going to be nuances to this, is if you're getting one sale every 1,000 views, that's typically baseline. Now, if it's more expensive, it's going to be a little less sales per higher views. That's fine. And there's a ton of other metrics within there. But in general, like, that's the rough guideline that I'm looking at. And so my goal is to find a product that I think that I can promote really well. And if I start to get some of these metrics, it doesn't even have to completely go viral. I'm going to post it every single day and milk that dry. Because again, if you play this right, you should be able to, you should really be able to post a product for a very long period of time. Last year, this is on my YouTube, I did a case study on this where one product made me over $50,000. It was a micro ingredients moringa powder. I did a case study on that, but I posted that product from July all the way until December. I made money on that product for 6 months straight. And it's because I'm following these principles. So again, I think this all goes back to TikTok is really incentivizing this. Like, does TikTok really want people promoting 80 million products? I don't know, but it seems as if they're pushing that way. And again, this all kind of goes back to the theory of, like, the problem is when you're constantly switching products, and I know this is going to be vastly different than what most people are doing, that's perfectly fine, but I truly believe this is part of the reason I've gotten to the success that I've had, is because I find winning products, I learn how to promote them, and the added benefit, not only you get the algorithm boost where TikTok knows who they're pushing it to. And now the argument some people say is that, oh, well, you're linking a product, TikTok should know. But for whatever reason, I've seen consistency among products. And something, a real life example of this is every time I switch products, I do this, testing phase. Every time I switch products, the views go down a little bit. And then it kind of builds back up. So it's like TikTok, it seems like they're really rewarding consistency, and all the data that I've seen for myself, my family and such, it all really backs that. So you're doing, I call it the 15 video rule. You might need a bit more videos if you're a bit newer to really test, but all this really is you're testing for a couple different variables. You're testing your views and you're testing for your conversions, right? And if you think you're finding a winning product where you're getting some views, you're getting some conversions, it's like, okay, well, let me play with this a bit more. Now, I do 15 videos specifically. I've been doing this a long time, and like, again, I've run the same scripts over and over. You have all these variables together that create your income on TikTok. The variables include how good your content is, how good the product is. There are, believe it or not, to this day, it's still products that I will test. And I would argue, I've done this across 20 plus different products, 100 plus million views, etc. Like, I feel like I know this better than anybody else. There are still products that I will test for whatever reason. They just won't take off. They won't sell. Now, maybe they take off in a couple weeks from now. That's a whole nother conversation. But in general, it's like some products just won't sell, and that's okay, whether that's me. Now, again, for myself, I've kind of taken the quality of my videos out of the equation just because I feel like I've gotten that down. But in the beginning, if you're testing 15 videos, let's say you get to 15 and you get 1 or 2 sales, like, the point of this is to make a definitive decision, whether that's yes or no. The worst place to be in TikTok shop is, the middle, where you're like, oh, it's kind of working, let me switch to this, let me go back to this. Like, no. Like, I always tell people, like, stick to the 15 videos, even for myself. It's like, if I make 6 videos and I'm like, this just isn't going well, it doesn't matter. Stick to the 15 videos, test it out, look for, the combination of views and conversions. You're looking at a couple other things, like, I could literally talk for 2 hours about metrics, how to understand watch time, percent that watch the full video, but look for the patterns. Let's say one video gets a sale. Okay, what did I say specifically in that video versus other videos that might not have done well? Maybe it was a piece that I said about XYZ. You have to really compare and put together a roadmap to figure out what kind of content that people want. And this kind of goes back to the pillars of content. I define pillars of content as like the styles of content that you can make on TikTok Shop. In general, there's variations within this. You can interweave them. I kind of call them talking head, story time, your classic TikTok shop, where you're just talking into the phone, you're telling a relatable story. That's kind of one pillar of content. Another pillar of content is skits. Skits are really well done. I do skits with my grandma a lot because they convert really well. But again, a lot of people complain about skits, saying they get high views, low sales. You have to optimize for sales, not for entertainment. And then you also have conspiracy theory, green screen. I kind of mix that into one style of content. But it doesn't have to just be conspiracy theory. It can be using YouTube clips, kind of just, bucket that in there. Then you have faceless, and you kind of have middle of funnel. I live off of top of funnel, middle of funnel. I am not a fan of bottom of funnel at all in the slightest. It's pretty clear that I think that TikTok is trying to move away from bottom of funnel, or at the very least, I'm going off a bit of a tangent here, but if you're going to do bottom of funnel, at the very least, make it somewhat interesting. Like, there's going to be so many times people can go double discount. Like, there's nothing that separates you. If you're going to do bottom of funnel, at the very least, just be like, don't get scammed buying this Propel water bottle. It's literally $20 cheaper than when I bought it 3 weeks ago. So I linked it down below. I don't know when that sale's ending. Like, at least do some sort of iteration with bottom of funnel. But in general, I live off top of funnel and middle of funnel, and I interweave both of them. I think that's where the real money is at. The real long-term skill and success on this platform is top of funnel, middle of funnel. So if you are doing a bottom funnel, that's fine. If you're making money on it, congrats. I'm genuinely happy for you, but I don't think there's any long-term success with bottom of funnel. So those are kind of the pillars of content. You're testing those. You're looking at all these different stats. You're applying the 15 video rule. And then from there, you want to see, okay, should I keep posting this or not? Now, again, full transparency, this is the hardest part. This is something that I've done better at over time. I've made this decision, hundreds and hundreds of times where you decide, okay, do I move on or do I stay with it? And honestly, there's specific metrics that I look for, but generally speaking, like you'll get better at this decision over time. You'll just get that feeling. Like I start to get this feeling every once in a while. It's like, I just feel like this should pop. I have enough experience where it's like, okay, I know my videos are good. It's like, I just have this weird gut feeling that if I keep with this for another 5 videos, this might work out really well. So, but no matter what, stick with 15 videos at the minimum, and then kind of make that decision in terms of views and conversions. There's no right answer. There's no wrong answer. It's just kind of, again, we're trying to stack the odds in our favor in such a way that we are giving ourselves the highest probability of going viral, picking the right products, and just testing the content specifically. That's my whole goal with doing all this. So you test out your product and you either move on or you keep going with that product. And again, the goal is like to put yourself in a position where you can become one of these top affiliates. I've had plenty of times where I start promoting a product, I'm doing well, I'm one of the top affiliates, and just crashes and burns. That's fine. But again, I'm trying to put myself in a situation where I'm going to be one of the top affiliates, and if I ride it to the top, I'm going to ride it to the top. Again, one product specifically this year has made me $70,000 plus on TikTok Shop this year because I've been riding it. But again, that situation only happens when you demand test. And I think the distribution of sales among products proves this, where the name of the game is how do you get to the top 3? The money isn't in number 10. Now again, some people are going to argue it's like, well, if you're spread out across multiple products, but consistently time and time again, I have seen that, consistency. I beat out, most affiliates because I'm beating them out in terms of number of posts. And I think the TikTok algorithm specifically is starting to reward this. So again, going back to the whole process, you're testing out the product, and if you found a winner, great. Now, how high you can scale that winner is going to be dependent upon 2 factors: how well the product is doing, how well your competition is doing, and how good you are at making videos. So again, I'm just trying to put myself in the right positions where I can make this crazy money. It's not going to always work out, but in general, all I care about is, on each account, like, 100, 200 something bucks a day on each account, and then sometimes some of them will scale up to $500, $600, $700 a day. But in my opinion, that's more so a little bit out of your control, more so aligned with how well the product is doing in general. So if the product does not take off, that's perfectly fine. Again, like my hit rate, I've been doing this for 12 plus months. This is the system I've been following for over a year now. My hit rate is typically 1 out of 2, 1 out of 3. If you're newer, it might be 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5, but it's still better than, in my opinion, getting a bunch of samples. Again, I can't even tell you the last time I got a sample. I either buy stuff, but again, for most of my accounts, like, right now, at my peak, I was running 6 accounts. Right now I'm running 4 accounts. And, consistently, most of my products, one of my accounts have been posting since beginning of January, another one since end of February, that same product, another one, I actually just started scaling on that. We're doing, that was my grandma's account. We just found a new one, and I'm started on my other accounts. I've been posting for about a month and a half on that same product. So it's like, that's the benefit of this as well. Once you find your winner and you're making good content with it, again, don't forget, the number 1 priority is making good content. And I'll get into content specifics and things that you're probably doing wrong after I kind of go through my process. But so again, my hit rate is typically 1 out of 3, 1 out of 2, 1 out of 3, where I've gotten to. But for you specifically, where maybe your content isn't as on par, you have to keep that in mind. You have to be brutally honest with yourself, reviewing your own content, seeing what other people are doing, implementing. So it's a combination of reiterating the market in terms of more angles that are already out there, in combination with using the things that are already out there. People, again, there's typically people are on 2 ends of the spectrum when they're making content. One group of people, they copy every single thing that every other person does word for word. That can get you somewhat far. It's only going to get you so far. The other group of people, they're starting all their scripts from scratch. Why are you doing that? You have your angles out there. You have your problems that people are talking about. You have your features, benefits, and how you're actually selling the product. That's all out there. So you need to be somewhere in the middle where you're taking bits and pieces from everything. And that's where the real, craziness starts to happen. You can do crazy numbers when you pull bits and pieces across all of these different products, or your product specifically rather, and combining that into one video. And this all goes back into analyzing, right? So there's a couple different things that I'm looking at when I'm testing out a product. Like, are people resonating with the problems? Are people resonating with the features, benefits? Are people resonating with the story? Are people resonating with the background? Are people resonating with the on-screen text? Are people resonating with, completely lost my train of thought, but combining all those variables together is how you really read this data. And that's something I focused on myself. I truly believe I understand the data better than anybody on TikTok Shop, whereas somebody says, oh, I have high watch time, low percent that watched the full video. Okay, well, you did a great job with your problems, but your features, benefits sucked, and nobody knows why they're actually buying this product in the first place. So you combine all those pieces together, and that's how you really hit scale in combination with finding a winning product. And the analogy that I always use, if you're scaling an e-com brand, you could be the best operator, marketer in the world, but if you're trying to sell something that people don't want, it doesn't matter how good you are, right? You're going to be fighting an uphill battle. So why would it not be the same thing with TikTok Shop? And going back now to reading your analytics when you're making a product decision, when you're running ads for an e-com brand, you're looking at, you have a click-through rate, CPC, CPM, ROAS. Why are you not doing the same with TikTok Shop? Why are you not religiously studying your watch time, your percent that watch the full videos, your sale or your view to sale conversion, and potentially if you have a newer account, your view to product click to sale ratio. Those are all things that I've spent a ton of time studying and understanding. And there's no one right answer for each specific product. And that's the confusing part where people get stuck in. So that's why I go back to the 15 video rule, because you're trying to make a definitive decision, whether that's yes or no. It's not going to be a definitive decision, but you're trying to say in your head as best as possible, should I move on or should I not? Don't get stuck in the middle, post something else, and then you go back. Like, I am a big proponent in sticking with it, and I've seen time and time again, TikTok rewards consistency in terms of posting products. And that's another question that I get is, oh, does niche matter? Yes and no. To me, more important is consistency among products. That's the number one thing. Number two is somewhat niche. I would just say in general, don't go from posting men's ratchet straps to women's makeup. Like, don't go from two opposite ends of the spectrum. I think people talk about niche and just niche overall too much. I really don't think it's that important. So don't worry about if you're selling a supplement and then you're testing out some sort of, again, ratchet strap. Just keep it somewhat in the ballpark, and that's the most important part. And then, so that's my process. Again, this is rinse and repeat. I've been doing this now for 10, 12 plus months. This is, something that I've tested this over and over. I've finally got it dialed down to a point where it's like, that's why I feel like I'm hitting my stride specifically, because I've gone through everything that can go right. I've gone through everything that can go wrong. All of it, I've gone through it. And so as you start to make these decisions over time, you'll start to collect this data. Like, okay, I've seen this before. I know what to do here. I know how to fix this. So like, for example, your percent that watch the full video is low. What specific decision are you making to do that? And I can confidently say the reason that I've had the success that I've had thus far, and that's something, again, I pride myself on, is consistency. I haven't done less than 15K per month in, I think, like 7-8 months, something like that. And it's because I've religiously studied data and put myself in the right positions, as well as, of course, making good content. So that's my process. Again, I strongly discourage you. Again, some people are going to disagree. If you're doing like 10K plus per month consistently, that's perfectly fine. Do what works for you, but consistently across the board, I've seen that this strategy has been extremely repeatable and consistent. And it seems like that this is the way that TikTok wants to go. So I won't go for too much longer. I just wanted to cover things you're looking at with content specifically, and then I'll answer some questions. I've seen a bunch of stuff flying in, but I didn't want to get too sidetracked here. So content specifically, so for myself, I've done probably 80% health and wellness. In my opinion, health and wellness is harder in the beginning, but once you scale it, it's just so repeatable. It's the plug and play. Again, an example, on my grandma's account, I've used the same script 5 different times across the product, and it's going viral 5 different times. It's the same script. You just plug and play the problems and the features, benefits. So it's like, once you do this multiple times, it becomes plug and play. Now, this all started when you start to analyze the data in of itself. So how do you actually make good content? Again, this goes back to me doing like a health and wellness. My biggest recommendation to everybody is you need to treat every single product like a problem-solving product. Every single product. It doesn't matter if it's a supplement. It doesn't matter if it's not. You're solving a problem. People buy because of problems. They don't buy because of solutions. Now, there's going to be a couple arguments like, oh, what about, selling the sale, things like that. Like, yes, but you're solving a problem that they didn't want to spend money on in the first place, and now they're dropping the price. So you are solving a problem. No matter what it is, people buy off of problems and not solutions. So you need to be solving a problem. And the mistake that I see time and time again, whether it's supplements, non-supplements, I try to think of an example here. Most people are like, this is the greatest tasting Propel I've ever seen. Nobody cares. People buy on emotion. And so instead you need to be saying something like, is there anything worse than when you're out exercising and you have no electrolytes and you're like gasping for any sort of liquid, and then you drink water and it takes you 20 minutes just to refuel, blah, blah. I found out that you just need electrolytes. Took something, the most basic example you can give, and I turned it into a problem-solving product. I create situations where you're solving those problems specifically. The other issue that people do is they spend too much time on solutions in general. So even if they bring up problems, they're not spending enough time on problems specifically. So a lot of people, and it doesn't matter whether you have a 30-second video or a minute video, this should be changed in proportion to the length into the length of your video specifically. So for example, like a lot of my videos, I focus on 60% problems. You won't find me bringing up a product until about 45 seconds. And that's very purposeful because people aren't going to buy something until they're confident that you know what you're talking about and they can either like resonate or believe you in terms of that you can actually solve their problem in the first place. And now this kind of goes in the whole concept of middle of funnel, top of funnel, bottom of funnel. But in general, that's an underrated aspect. Like, please act like everything is a problem-solving product. And if it's not, it's going to be harder to sell. Or at the very least, just think about problems. And because I know it's very difficult in the beginning, because especially I know when I started, I was like, what do you mean you talk about problems first? But, it can be difficult in the beginning to kind of rework your brain instead of talking about solutions. But problems are more painful when people buy because of problems, not because of solutions. They buy the solution when they're bought in on the problem in the first place. And if you don't dig into their problems enough, they don't care what solution you're offering. They're just like, that's cool, keep scrolling. So that's like the number one thing. Another thing that a lot of people mess up is something that I think too many people don't talk about enough is just tonality in general. I know it's a really cliche thing to say, but people, you need to, the biggest example I can give for everybody is act like you are on the phone with a friend, like with FaceTime. So people, again, are on two spectrums. They're staring at the camera, talking like this, and this is the best product I've ever seen in my entire life. Or they're just like all over the place telling this. There's one guy in particular, I can't think of his username. He tells these elaborate stories. He's one of the greatest storytellers that I've ever seen on TikTok Shop. But he's telling this crazy story. He's going here, 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 and here, and then he finally arrives. I can't imagine him doing too much sales because he's telling a great story, but it's not interweaved into why the person cares about this in the first place. Telling crazy stories from his childhood. So I'm like, okay, again, you got to be somewhere in the middle where you're telling this crazy story, but it still has to be relatable and bring it back down to earth specifically. And another one that I see people make time and time again is I. Nobody cares about you. They care about themselves. So you got to focus on solving their problems. Now, again, a pitfall that I see people make is they'll get caught, be like, you. So do this test on your own videos. It'll help you make more money. Listen, go back to your own video and start to say out loud anytime you say I, me, my versus you, yours, know what I mean? And say that out loud. You should be interweaving between I and you. I, my, you, I, my, you. Okay, well, that's cool. We interweaved it. If you go back and watch all your videos and it's I, my, I, big problem. The opposite is also true. You're watching your video, you're saying out loud, you know what I mean? It's like, oh my gosh, nobody just wants to feel like they're at a therapist session. They're listening to TikTok because they want to be entertained. So the biggest lesson I can say is interweave I and you, and that goes back to interweaving entertainment and information specifically. So again, I would say that's kind of my process from start to finish. And again, I truly believe this is the best way, most consistent way to do TikTok Shop. Some people are going to disagree. That's perfectly fine. But again, this is all just based off of data that I've seen. And you're thinking in your head, like, how do I start to implement this? Either go all in with this or don't at all. Where some people are going to get called up. I can already see it after this call. They're like, oh, this is pretty cool. I see what he's talking about. And they're going to post 15 videos for one product and like, my sales dropped. When I always tell people is like, you're going to go backwards before you go forward. So if you're going to commit to this, if your goal is 10K plus per month, commit to this and stick with it. Don't do it for 2 weeks and go, oh, I'm going to go back to what I was doing. Just, don't waste your time. So stick with it. Either way, whatever you're doing, stick with it. You can, improve some of the things that I'm talking about, or just, commit to this completely if you want to get to that 10K plus. Again, I firmly believe this is the best way to do 10K plus consistent every single month. And that's based off of, again, what I've done ever since I've been on TikTok Shop.